What's up, everybody? Welcome into Talkin College Football. I am your host, Phillip Jordan from Last World College Football and 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I am the in-studio host and producer of Dothan Woods Football. Welcome into the Thursday edition of Talkin College Football. Got a fun show planned for you guys today. I'm going to be joined by Adam Spencer from Saturday Down South. We're going to look back at SEC Media Days, look at Alabama and Georgia. Alabama's the favorite. We expect Georgia to be there with them. But can anybody in the conference knock off either one? We'll discuss that with Adam Spencer and much more. Also, we'll get into some quarterback rankings he did a while ago. So, SEC quarterback talk also on the podcast. Before I go any further, if anybody watching on YouTube or anywhere the video is at saying your lighting is bad, man, what is up? Lighting is usually solid. The audio content from the Phillip Jordan part can be sketchy at times, but where is the good lighting? Well, right before I went to talk with Adam Spencer, we recorded that on Tuesday. My ring lights decided to stop working, so that's why if you're watching the video form of the show, the lighting is not good. I apologize. I'm going to get one as soon as I can. Next week's podcast, both here and over on the Cover 2, may not be great, but just letting you guys know if you were wondering why the lighting is looking bad here on the video form of the podcast. But also, after my conversation with Adam Spencer, I'm going to go over some news around college football. I'm working the segment title for that. That's going to be a regular thing interview, then news around college football. I'm thinking around the nation or the pulse of the nation. Trying to workshop that a little bit. But before we get into all that great college football conversation, let you guys know you can find me in the podcast. You find me on social media at PJordan SEC. The podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch on YouTube, either on the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube page or the Talkin College Football YouTube page. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. And also, if you leave a comment on YouTube, I will also read that on a future edition. And please, once again, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications over on YouTube as well. You can always email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com. Now, let's jump into the SEC. Let's talk with Adam Spencer from Saturday Down South. All right, everybody, joining me on the show today, we are talking the best conference in college football. I'm joined by Adam Spencer. You can check all his work out over at Saturday Down South. Adam, I appreciate you jumping on, talk the SEC.
Well, it's talking season now, but right after this episode comes out, it's gonna quickly turn over to fall camp time. So it's a good time. It's a good time to jump into things.
Yeah, absolutely. And last week, of course, was a SEC Media Days, and Greg Sankey. I want to say this about what he had to say in his open remarks. It didn't feel like a State of the SEC address. It really felt like it was State of College Football address with what he had to say. But yeah, he talked about the SEC a little bit, but it really seemed like his agenda was more about the national landscape of where college football is headed.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a lot to do with, that's just where the SEC has positioned itself. The Big Ten and the SEC, things are seemingly trending towards two major power conferences and, maybe a third one, but yeah, so when Greg Sankey talks, that's a pretty big deal for the rest of the college football footprint, just based on what the SEC has done and where it's going. And I mean, it's adding Texas and Oklahoma in a couple of years. So that's where the action is in the SEC. So yeah, everybody stops and listens when Greg Sankey talks at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've heard him talk on interviews. He didn't really feel like much of a celebrity before COVID, but now he can't even go anywhere. It's turned him into a big celebrity. And you're talking about, they're not in a hurry to add teams. And you talked about three power conferences. So I want to ask you, ACC or the Big 12, which one do you think is going to be that third conference?
I mean, the ball's in the Big 12's court because if the Big 12 and Pac-12 come to some sort of merger agreement, not only does that make a certain amount of sense geographically, it does. I mean, obviously you have the outliers like West Virginia being in the Big 12. That's kind of an outlier there, and UCF would be there. But you could either make it a total coast to coast league or even throw the ACC a bone if they want it and say, hey, do you want West Virginia and UCF to sort of bolster your presence here on the East Coast, and we'll merge with the Pac-12. There's so much that's left undecided in so many different directions that goes, but I think that the Big 12 among the ACC, Pac-12, and Big 12 is in the best position right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I said it. I feel like the days of the Pac-12 are over, unless like you said, the merger with the Big 12 and ACC they're just in a tough spot. And I kind of feel like if the SEC was to, add more teams, that's going to be a picking spot for them. There's a lot of teams that make sense because something that Greg Sankey said during his remarks last week that I liked and it caught my attention. He said staying in the Southeast quadrant of the country, because Texas and Oklahoma make sense. USC and UCLA from, geography does not. So I think that was very interesting. He said that. So it kind of does feel like he wants to stay in, like you said, that quadrant of the country.
And I think that the ACC is on the clock here. If they don't get Notre Dame, then, I think that what is meant by we're good at 16 for now is that they're looking at that 2035 grant of rights expiration date or whenever it is for those ACC schools. And then it's free season. It's open season on those teams. I think the SEC would love to scoop up, Clemson, Florida State, Miami for sure, those three teams. And then, I'm sure they'd love to have North Carolina. And if Duke comes as a package deal there, then that's great. But, the Big Ten might also want that Duke, North Carolina package deal. But, there's a decade to sort that sort of stuff out for now. So that's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I think that that's what the implication maybe is that the ACC's days are numbered and it's just a waiting game until the SEC and Big Ten can be like, hey, look at how many billions and billions of dollars we're scooping up right now. Your media rights deal is kind of crappy right now. So once you can, let's bring you into the fold here and make even more money.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's a lot of them guys got me thinking after the USC UCLA moves. Like, what were we thinking by making that move? I mean, it's not a good thing for anybody in ACC.
Yeah, it's not. If they don't get Notre Dame sometime in the next couple of years to make a pledge to join in football, then I think that we're watching the last decade of ACC existence here, starting this fall or next fall, however you want to define the 10-year period until these schools can get out of this grant of rights.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess he reestablished his thoughts. He's against automatic qualifiers in the playoff. I like it when he talks about the current system. He said it's worked for us. I mean, yeah, you've had two teams get there. So his comments. What'd you make of his comments about the college football playoff? I mean, because I feel like it's now. I mean, it's going to be interesting how that goes now with what the SEC and the Big Ten is doing, all the realignment, where that goes.
Yeah, so I was actually looking into these numbers today, so that's interesting that you bring up, the automatic qualifiers, because I was taking a look at it, and I just think it's such a silly thing to get hung up on for these commissioners because, okay, so all six major conference, if you want to include the AAC is the Power Six, all six conference winners last year finished in the top 16 easily. Alabama was 1, Michigan 2, Cincinnati 4, Baylor 7, Utah 11, Pitt 12. So they're all in. That's 6 right there. Even the top 2 independent teams, Notre Dame number 5, BYU number 13, were in the top 16. If you want to take that a step further, even of the major conference title game losers, Georgia was number 3, Oklahoma State 9, Oregon 14, and Iowa 15. So that's 4 of the 6 losers that are still in the top 16 here. Wake Forest lost to Pitt in the ACC title game. So if they beat, and they were number 17, so they beat Pitt, they're in the top 16, obviously. Houston lost to Cincinnati in the AAC title game, would have been top 16. They finished 20, so in the final CFP poll. So it stands to reason that if you knock off Cincinnati and hand them their first loss, they're in the top 16 too. So I just don't see why we're getting so hung up on automatic qualifiers when it's going to be really, really hard for a team that wins a conference championship not to make the top 16 at the end of the year.
Yeah, especially certain when you know that. Well, obviously, we know the SEC champ's going to be there. The Big Ten champ's going to be there. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, these champs are going to be there. I mean, it doesn't really matter if you one way or the other. So, but it's going to be interesting with that. Where are you at on that? I like it while we're on that topic. I think it's needed just to make the game more, get more fans to watch because it is a lot of times the same. It feels like it's the same 3 or 4 teams every year. We know the same teams are probably going to win the championship every year, one of those teams, but just getting more teams in there to kind of help, more the casual fan. I mean, I think it would be a good thing for college football, but where are you on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you look at the NBA does 16 teams. Baseball does. I forget how they're changing it every year, but they're expanding. So they're adding more teams. Football is adding more teams to the playoffs because there's more money to be made. We're gonna watch these games, especially these games that matter. So I don't think that everybody says, well, every game matters in the regular season. That's what's so great about college football. It's like, yeah, but sometimes they matter too much because one loss in a school like Cincinnati would be nowhere near the playoff. So I don't mind it. I like seeing some new teams in there, and yeah, you're right. Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, USC. If Lincoln Riley can build them up, we know the teams that are going to be there at the end. So it's just, but it's still fun to get there. It's still fun to go on that journey. And I'm a Boston Celtics fan, and yeah, they lost to the Warriors in the NBA Finals, but it was a fun journey to get there. I liked watching them beat the Bucks in 7. I liked watching them beat the Heat in 7. So it's about the playoffs and the intensity of that atmosphere and survive in advance.
Yeah, and everybody that fusses about too many teams, they all know good and well they'll be watching them when they roll around. The ones that are against it, I said you're going to watch the game. So why are you complaining about it? Oh, kind of back just to the SEC overall going into the season. This may sound like a dumb question, but it's Alabama got to be the favorite, right?
Oh yeah, I think it's not a dumb question because Georgia has earned that respect. But this is a rare year where Alabama lost a lot, but they're in a better position than Georgia is. Georgia lost a ton of talent off that historic defense, and they still have 2 or 3 first-round picks on that defense. So that's what's crazy about that. But that defense is going to take a step back. They're still going to be one of the best in college football, but they're not going to be a historically great defense. Meanwhile, Alabama, and they lost Dan Lanning. That's a big loss when you lose a coordinator like Dan Lanning. Alabama kept both coordinators for the first time in a long time. That's great. I mean, I know some Alabama fans wanted to run Bill O'Brien out of town for some reason, but
they did.
I think his offense is solid. I think that Alabama has reloaded pretty well on that. I mean, you have really they just followed that same blueprint for wide receivers in the portal. I think Jermaine Burton is kind of the guy who's going to have a lot of catches and just be like the John Mechie type. And then they got Tyler Harrell from Louisville who averaged something like 29 yards per catch or something last year. But he only had 30 catches or something like that. So I think that they'll target him a little bit more this year and try to get him that Jameson Williams role. And so that's going to be a scary offense. So yeah, they're definitely the top one, but Georgia deserves that respect to be mentioned in the same sentence at least.
You're talking about last year it did seem like offensively a weakness was the offensive line was not the best. I mean, their offensive line wasn't bad, but it wasn't where you probably want Alabama to be. I mean, obviously saw it in the SEC championship game against Georgia to help Bryce Young. It was quick passes. I mean, and they did that against Auburn second half. Do you have any concerns going into this season with that offensive line? I know they got the Vanderbilt transfer, Tyler Steen coming in at tackle, but do you have any concerns about that Alabama offensive line coming to the season?
A little bit, but I think that they have so much talent. Yeah, losing a guy like Evan Neal is going to hurt. He's just a beast of a man, just a great offensive lineman. But they still have, they have Ekior on that offensive line. They have, like you mentioned, Steen is coming in. So they're going to, like, everybody was going to have problems against that Georgia defensive line last year. Even Auburn had a really, really strong defensive line. That wasn't the problem with their football team last year. So, they're going to struggle against the elite defensive lines and elite pass rushes. But, I mean, they're just going to be so good. And, giving Bill O'Brien another year to sort of learn, having him and Bryce Young together for 2 years is going to be just such a benefit for them. And then, I think that like Brian Robinson was a great running back last year, but I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a little more versatile. He can do a little more in the passing game, kind of like Najee Harris could do. And so I think that that's a real X factor here that Bill O'Brien's going to get to play around with and, make some quick outlet passes that maybe he wasn't able to do last year.
Yeah, and it helps that they won't just have one running back. I mean, you'll have Trey Sanders returning, Jace McClellan. You got Roydell Williams. Those two were injured last year. I mean, that was a big thing last year with Alabama. It was impressive with Brian Robinson. I mean, he was the running game toward the end of the year because everybody was hurt. I mean, they were having to just find guys to come in and spell him. So the fact that you're going to have that depth at running back is going to be real huge for Alabama and take a lot of pressure off Bryce Young too.
Yeah, a quick passing game is a quarterback's best friend against an elite pass rush. So, and how do you trip up an elite pass rush? Well, you let them free rush and then you throw a screen over their head. So, I think that Gibbs is going to be big in that. Like you said, Trey Sanders, and McClellan and Williams, if those guys are healthy, that's a deep group. That's up there with some of the better ones in the SEC. So.
We hadn't even touched on this defense. Will Anderson led defense. You got DJ Dale up there on the defensive front. You got Henry To'oTo'o. You got Dallas Turner sitting there at linebacker. You've got Jordan Battle back there in the secondary. Eli Ricks coming up for LSU. I mean, this defense is loaded with guys all over the place. I mean, I know it's been thrown out there during the all season, but you really got to wonder if these guys stay healthy. I mean, could they be one of the all-time Alabama defenses this upcoming year?
I think it's possible. I mean, I think we have to judge, are they going to look like that 2009, 2011 era? No, because college football has changed a little bit. Like what Georgia did last year was so impressive because they did it in this era of college football. But it was such a symbiotic relationship with Georgia last year because the offense was a possession offense. And that is like if Alabama's offense, if you just trade Alabama's offense to Georgia last year and keep Georgia's defense the same, yeah, Georgia's defense is still going to be one of the greatest, but maybe they allow 17 points per game because Alabama's offense just scores too fast, right? So the symbiotic relationship between the offense and defense really helped both sides last year at Georgia. So, yeah, Alabama's defense should be just absolutely fearsome and elite this year. But, if the offense is scoring 45, 50 points a game, then, they're going to be on the field a lot and facing a lot of passes. So, they might not have the numbers that Georgia's defense had last year, but that doesn't mean that they're any less elite necessarily.
Yeah, talking about Georgia, defensively, you do expect to be good. I mean, not like last year. You got Jalen Carter on front, Nolan Smith at linebacker, Kayla Ringo, and Chris Smith in the secondary. But it feels like I kind of wonder if more is going to have to be put on Stetson Bennett in the offense. Because like I said, the defense is going to be good, but you don't expect to be great like they were last year. But I just feel bad. Teams are going to figure out how to play a team that's going to play 3 or 4 tight ends, I guess, with what Georgia's got with Brock Bowers, Gilbert, you got Darnell Washington. That's an interesting thing with them, just what they can do with the tight end position.
Yeah, and Kendall Milton and Kenny McIntosh, that's a good running back duo to have there. So it might not be the Chubb Michelle era of Georgia running backs, but it's going to be a big part of their offense. Like you said, the tight end group is the best in the country, and I don't think it's even particularly close. But Stetson Bennett goes into this season as the guy, and I think that that's going to help him. He's going to get all those first team reps this offseason, which should help. He gets Todd Monken back, which just is another benefit. And yeah, they lost George Pickens in the receiving room and Jermaine Burton, but like AD Mitchell was battling injuries last year. They have Kyrus Jackson who battled injuries. Rosemary Saint, I think is Jack Saint. Rosemary Jack Saint is a guy who has been injured off and on. He can have an impact this year. They have so many Arian Smith. They have so many guys who just were so inconsistently on the field last year that if those guys can stay on the field along with Ladd McConkey, who was one of their more reliable receivers last year, then maybe if defenses target Brock Bowers more, then those guys get free and Stetson makes them look foolish. I think that this offense can be even better this year than it was last year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting with them in that too. So we talk about Alabama and Georgia. It obviously feels like we're going to see these two play again in Atlanta. But is there a team in the SEC that can prevent that from happening in your mind?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a gap between the Alabamas and Georgias and the rest of the field. Like I do think that, but a team that I'm looking at is Tennessee. That offense is elite. Georgia, can they win all their games and get to Atlanta 12-0? I think that they're that talented, but is it likely? I mean, it's just so hard to go undefeated in the regular season 2 years in a row. Like even Alabama doesn't do that very often. Is there a point that they trip up? It could be against a high-powered offense like Tennessee with Hendon Hooker coming back. Josh Heupel year 2 with him. Cedric Tillman I think is a first-round draft pick and one of the best receivers in the country. That's a team that I'll be watching. And then in the West, I think Texas A&M is still a year away. Even if whoever wins that quarterback battle, I think that the future is Connor Weigman, the 5-star freshman, and I don't think he'll be ready until 2023. So I think Alabama has a cleaner path in the West, but watch out for Ole Miss. I think a lot of teams or a lot of media and fans are sleeping on the Rebels a little bit. I love what Lane Kiffin did in the portal. His offense is going to be good even without Jeff Levy. He's going to make it work. Jackson Dart needs to step up a little bit from what we saw this spring, but Zach Evans, Ulysses Bentley, that's a great running back duo. Jonathan Mingo and Jordan Watkins, the Louisville transfer. That's great. They brought Michael Trigg over from USC along with Dart. So, I'd say watch out for the Rebels still, even though there's some turnover there.
Going over to the East, because I saw your tweet before media days. You put your rankings or your predicted order finished. A lot of people are all over Kentucky this year. Will Levis, I did not know he was that highly thought of a NFL draft prospect, but the day after the draft, his name is up there, as projected first-round draft pick. Where are you at with Kentucky? Why do you see Tennessee being ahead of them in the East?
I'm a little worried about the wide receiver group. Losing a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson is just like that's a huge, huge loss that I don't know that they addressed with another star pass catcher this offseason. And then you have, Chris Rodriguez is one of the best running backs in the SEC, but is he going to be suspended to start the year? How long would that suspension be? Because they have a pretty early game against Florida. So, that's a big one in the SEC East race. I think that's a situation to watch. But I think that Mark Stoops deserves the benefit of the doubt here. In that, when I say they might take a step back, that means going from second in the East to third. Like they're not. This isn't your father's Kentucky Wildcats. It's a new era in Lexington. So I think that they're still a very solid team.
Real quickly before I let you go, quarterbacks. You also anybody needs to follow Adam if you want to see some good lists. Follow Adam Spencer on Twitter. He's always got some really good lists, and I love the quarterback position. I'm almost obsessed with the position, just watching how these guys go. And talked about Will Levis. He's getting a lot of hype before this season. But at number 2, you had Hendon Hooker, and then you had KJ Jefferson. And then you had Will Levis at number 4. What do you see with those two? And KJ Jefferson too over Will Levis. And this is a 2-part question. And what are your thoughts on Will Levis as a quarterback and maybe as a prospect into the NFL draft?
Yeah, I think that Hendon Hooker is going to be in that first round conversation this time next year. Like, the dude has a cannon for an arm, and like people are like, well, can he read a defense? Can he like do this and that? It's like he threw 31 touchdowns and only had 3 interceptions last year. So whatever he's doing it right. And like you can say, oh, he's not really reading the defense. He's just throwing it where Josh Heupel tells him to throw it. It's like, yeah, but he's making those throws, and you know the first read isn't always open. And like when you only have 3 interceptions, and you're doing something right. And I mean, he had so much with his legs too that like he ran for like 600 yards last year and several touchdowns. So he's a touchdown machine. And last time I checked, that's how you win football games, is getting that ball in the end zone. So he does that. And he does that at an elite level. Yeah, he might need to show that he can break down NFL defenses. I'm sure that'll be a huge topic of conversation for him when he comes out to the draft and goes to the combine and stuff. But he's got all the physical attributes, and when you don't turn the ball over, that shows a certain level of intelligence at the QB position. KJ Jefferson, I mean, we're going to see. Like, I don't know. Maybe I am too high on him because he had Treylon Burks last year, but I trust him, and he's the best running quarterback in the SEC right now. I expect him to lead the way. Even with Anthony Richardson, I think Anthony Richardson will have the big plays, but I think KJ is a little more consistent with his legs. So I love the way that he works in that offense and just gets everything to go. But Will Levis, I wouldn't be surprised if he is a first round pick. Now, number 1 pick, I don't see that happening. I think that's a bit much. And I don't think that, I don't think he's going to have that Joe Burrow 2019 year either that's going to vault into the top, because Joe Burrow was throwing to, if you have a list of top 5 receivers in the NFL right now, there's a chance that 2 of his targets are on there, and Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. So he had a loaded offense there. But Will Levis has that gunslinger mentality. Like, I honestly think he has a little bit of Brett Favre in him, and I like that. But is it going to get him into trouble this year without a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson who can make plays on some of those risky throws? We'll see. But I do think he has the size, he has the arm, he has the intangibles, he has the confidence to be a first round pick. Just maybe outside the top 10.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, people are going to be watching him because, as you know, said, as soon as this past year's draft was over, the mocks came out. I mean, most people got Bryce Young at the top, but then you saw Will Levis. You even see Anthony Richardson up there, which he's got all the physical ability to be that. So it's going to be a lot intrigue, I think, with quarterbacks in this conference. I mean, it actually, especially at the top. I mean, Spencer Rattler, a guy last year going into last season, was looked at as a first round draft pick potentially, and we know the talent he has. Jackson Dart's a talented guy. I mean, there's so many good quarterbacks, I think, in the conference this year. It's going to be exciting to watch how all these guys do.
Oh, absolutely. And, we didn't even mention Stetson Bennett and Will Rogers, who are also just right up there with that top group, too, behind Bryce Young. So, yeah, this is a very, very deep quarterback group, like one of the deepest I can remember the SEC having.
Yeah, we didn't even mention the Auburn quarterback situation, which I'm sure is at the top of everybody's list.
Of course, TJ Finley or Zach Calzada. So, we'll see.
Yeah, sarcasm with that. But anyways, Adam, it's a lot of fun having you. And if everybody wants to check out some more great lists, go follow Adam on Twitter. But anyways, where can people follow you online if they want to keep up with everything you're doing?
Yeah, at Adam Spencer 4 on Twitter, and then over at Saturday Down South, we have the Saturday Football newsletter that comes out a couple times a week. So go check us out there too.
All right, sounds good, Adam. I appreciate the time, and I look forward to talking again sometime down the road.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, once again, thanks to Adam Spencer for coming on this edition of Talkin College Football. Be sure to check in with Adam as the season's going on in college football, and go check him out. Tons of great stuff on Twitter, stuff he does for Saturday Down South. A lot of good lists too, as we talked about there in the conversation. Now, a couple of news items want to go around the nation, pulse of the nation. I said that in the open. You guys need to help me out. What do I need to call this segment where we go over the news around the league on the cover 2 kind of works, but college football one. kind of figure it out. I do one on the high school football podcast called Around the Wiregrass, and that's pretty simple and easy. But here, got to figure something out. Got to figure out a cool name for that segment. Anyway, so let's jump into it. Whatever we're calling this segment for right now, we'll figure it out before the football season actually gets here. Matt Corral with some interesting comments. Now, a lot of you say, why isn't this on the Cover 2 NFL podcast, not here on the Talkin College Football podcast? Well, it does jump into college a little bit, and we got some quotes from Lane Kiffin as well. Matt Corral, this comes from the Charlotte Observer. He went to Ole Miss because he could play right away, is basically the gist of his comments. He goes on to say, I took the easy way out because I felt I could play right away. Knowing what I know now and trusting my instincts and trusting my work ethic, I would have went to a place that would have made me compete. Now, the thing about it, though, you say that. So you say you would have went somewhere else. USC was the first team, and then Florida was the next before he ended up going to Ole Miss. Before Lane Kiffin got there, under a different coaching staff, he did compete. He competed with John Rice Plumlee as the starter. He did not play much his first year, and then he competed with John Rice. John Rice actually played a lot the year before Lane Kiffin did get there to Ole Miss. So there was competition there, and he really excelled. And after he got through that competition, he became a much better player. Threw for 3,000 yards both the last two seasons. Really improved taking care of the ball. After the 2020 season, he threw 13 interceptions that year. This past year, he did not throw as many. He only threw 9. He threw 14 interceptions, in 2020. He threw 9 this past year. So he did improve. So that's kind of weird comments I'm making. Definitely not going to make you any kind of fan with Ole Miss. But they came about, the comments came about too, with him talking about, he got asked about the quarterback competition in Carolina between Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. And Matt Corral, obviously, this is a guy you was going to think maybe would have went in the first round. He didn't. But he's not part of competition. And honestly, Baker's going to be the starter in Carolina. But he was asked about that. He said, you want to go somewhere to compete? The greatest, competitors want to compete. Now, that part a lot of people are not using. So I do think the headlines are a little misleading. I don't think he's completely just throwing away his time at Ole Miss, but it's also one I can see Ole Miss fans are not too happy about. And then Lane Kiffin was on First Take on Wednesday, and he had this to say. It's a long quote, so bear with me. I wasn't here when Matt got here. So as far as the competition he was in, I wasn't here. Matt immediately texted me after that to say that that's not what he meant by it. He actually was in competition here. So he's a rookie in the NFL. He's not going to say everything right. He's not going to throw everything right, especially in the first year. I'm sure he'd take that back. We're in the time where there isn't much going on in the media. So like I told him, this will run for 48 hours and nobody will remember it. And that is true. This is the time of year we're just kind of grabbing whatever. I mean, unless you're a big baseball fan, there's really not much going on. The NFL is about to hit training camps, but there's not a lot of big NFL news coming out every day. College football is kind of slow now with media days. Big Ten's in their media days right now. But outside of that, there's not a lot to talk about. So you're going to grab what you can, and that's what this was. But also, I've got to appreciate Lane Kiffin sticking up for his quarterback, too, as well. And it's interesting overall how this kind of plays with the Ole Miss fans going forward. But, it is interesting talking points with what Matt Corral said. So John Talty has an upcoming book called The Leadership Secrets of Nick Saban due out on August 9th of this year, which I am going to be checking. I think I will be checking this book out. So there was a part of it that the New York Post went with, an excerpt from the book talking about Nick Saban almost went to ESPN in 2014, which is just following the season after the kick six, A.J. McCarron. That was the off season where there was a shift at Alabama. They were running what Nick Saban probably would rather run still to this day, more traditional style offense that he was used to. Play with defense, run the ball, do the thing, not what Alabama does now. But it was this followed the kick six loss. He met with CAA Sports Media talent agent Nick Khan, who is now with the WWE. He met with him before the 2013 season. then after 2014 or in 2014, he reached out. He wanted to see what's going on at ESPN. He has questions about game day life at ESPN. Was a lot working on a team and stuff like that. But eventually, Nick Saban did come back to coaching, and he's won 3 national championships since that time, 15, 17, and 2020. But it seems like Nick Saban was seriously considering jumping ship and going over to the worldwide leader. And college football would have been a lot different because, like I said, 2015, 2017, 2020, they won a national championship. And there's a couple of years in there they got beat by Clemson where they played and they lost. And then, of course, this past year against Georgia. So it would look a lot different. It would be interesting. And you kind of wonder, will Nick Saban go that route when he retires? Now, he's in his 70s now. Maybe not. Maybe when he does retire, he just retires. Him and Terry just go to the lake and we never see him again. But quite interesting there. And that book I think is going to be an interesting read as well. And speaking of Alabama, just throw some news out there on them. They landed a commitment from 5-star safety Caleb Downs on Wednesday for their 2023 recruiting class. So also, you remember on Tuesday's podcast, I was joined by Matt Marshall from the Orlando Sentinel, and we talked about the ACC. That was our big ACC preview here on Talkin College Football. But they hadn't released the media picks yet. Well, they did this week. Clemson is number 1 in the Atlantic and favored to win the championship. No really surprise there. NC State 2, Wake Forest 3. Heard us talk about them as contenders or teams that could potentially knock off Clemson in our conversation with Matt on Tuesday. Louisville coming in 4, Florida State 5. See if they can rebound. We talked about the forecast and what they need to do, and really for Mike Norvell going forward. Boston College and Syracuse finished out the Atlantic. Over in Coastal, they picked Miami. Mario Cristobal, I'm excited to see that. Tyler Van Dyke, what this team's going to look like. Pitt, number 2, North Carolina 3, Virginia 4. Now, Virginia's going to be really good on offense. So we'll see. We'll see if they can make some noise beyond 4. Virginia Tech at 5, Georgia Tech at 6, and then Duke is over at 7. So we'll see how the ACC shakes out those picks. But they have Clemson playing Miami and Clemson being the champion. But Miami gets to the ACC championship in their first year under Mario Cristobal. That's big. Momentum will be huge. Miami, I mean, it's already big with him there, but it'll be even bigger if Miami can make it there. And this is the last year divisions for the ACC of the Atlantic and the Coastal, which I'll be honest with you, sometimes I kind of had to go back and look, okay, which teams are in which here in these divisions? It's just Atlantic Coastal. It's not like East and West with the SEC or with the Big Ten. Oh, Legend and Leaders were horrible. That was you just in the Mulaney. That was bad. That was bad. And then the Pac-12 is kind of easy with North and South. But anyways, speaking of Big Ten, their media days are going on. I'm not going to go into great detail from what's being said at Big Ten media days. For this reason, on Tuesday, I will be joined by Jay Stevens from Locked On Buckeyes, and we're going to talk about Big Ten media days and preview the Big Ten season. I'm going to go over a few things that Kevin Warren has said this week at Big Ten Media Days, but that's going to be it. I'm not going to go over any coaches' quotes or anything like that. Like I said, me and Jay, we'll discuss that Monday night, but that pod will release on Tuesday morning. But Commissioner Kevin Warren did a couple things he had to say. He said, we will not expand just to expand. It will be strategic. It will add value to our conference. Notre Dame. But anyways, on that, yeah, I mean, that's what Greg Sankey said about going past the 16 is the same here with the Big Ten after adding both USC and UCLA to their conference. So say, Pat, don't add just to add, which I'm all for that. It makes sense. You don't want to just, hey, do you want to add value or do you just want to be the first one to 20? Is basically what it is. And both these conferences are not going to do that. It's intriguing. The Notre Dame part is intriguing. But you got to think, okay, if they get Notre Dame, you're not just going to sit 17. You're going to add an 18th, or probably 19th, 20th team. And then SEC will probably respond to that, the ACC. But be interesting. But right now, this is what they're saying, and that's what we got to go with. He said, I think the value of being across 4 time zones for multiple reasons is really important. I see that as 2 things, TV and recruiting. Now, Ohio State is a brand that can go into California and recruit. We all know that. This is a national recruiting brand. They can go into any part of the country to get players. But you got to think, going out west for the other programs in the Big Ten, maybe that do struggle as a national recruiting brand, now they'll be able to go into California. I mean, not get the top tier players, but they'll be able to go get some solid players from California. And TV wise, look, now at times, and let's just see where they go forward expanding. If they add any more Western teams, you can get in that 9:30 Central Time, Alabama, time slot. So you can be in 4 different time slots throughout today, and that is huge. I mean, that's TV. That's TV money, and it's going to be big for them in the SEC anyways. So you can have games at the noon window, then the mid-afternoon window, the prime time window, 6, 7 o'clock, and then you've got the Pac-12 after dark. I guess Big Ten after dark now window. So that's 4 windows you can get. That's pretty big for the Big Ten on that front. He said conference is the only one in the country with all head coaches returning from last year. Now, Jim Harbaugh wanted to mess that up, because if it was up to him, he would be a head coach in the NFL right now. He's not. Minnesota Vikings, that was one of them. The Raiders were rumored for the longest too. But yeah, if Jim Harbaugh had his way, he wouldn't be back at Michigan right now. He'd be in the NFL. So yeah, he got them all back, but there was certain one of your conference coach of your conference champion didn't really want to come back to Michigan. I mean, it's a good, second tier prize for him. I said, okay, I didn't get an NFL job, but I'm still the head coach at Michigan. But it's not really what he wanted, is it? He wanted to be the NFL head coach again. We all know that. We see you, Jim. We see you. I see you down here in Alabama, Dothan, Alabama. I see what you're doing. And of course, like all these commissioners, everybody, coaches, and coaches as well, like the NFL, but wants a cohesive plan, which that is pretty much across the board, everybody. Coaches and commissioners. No one's going to come out, especially coaches, that are against NIL, because that's just going to throw your recruiting out the window. You might as well just step down as head coach if you do something that stupid. But that's about it. I mean, they're all saying the same thing. So now I do agree. I would like to see across the board some kind of uniformity with that. But, state laws and, the government and Congress and all that, they've got bigger fish to fry right now than NIL and college sports. So it's going to be a problem for the foreseeable future with all this stuff going on. And guys, that's going to do it for Talking College Football. What did you think of our thoughts on this segment that we haven't figured out the name of? What did you think of our conversation with Adam Spencer? Let me know. Leave a review, please. I'm begging you. Yes, because I will read it, and that's content. We love content here on any of my podcasts. But also, thank you for checking out the show. Once again, thanks to Adam Spencer for coming on today's podcast. Remember, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. The podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, TuneIn. Also on YouTube, on the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel and the Talkin College Football YouTube channel. Go to one of the YouTube channels, subscribe, hit the bell for all the notifications. And if you leave a comment on a video, I will read it on a future edition of the show. You can always email me at sports.philipjordan@gmail.com. Hope everybody has a great week. Go check out the Cover 2 NFL podcast on Wednesday. Drop the NFC North preview with Brian Jones from popculture.com. We'll be previewing the AFC North next week. So check that out. And earlier this week, if you didn't check out Talking College Football, the ACC preview is up. Did that Tuesday. Big Ten on Tuesday with Jay Stevens, and looking to add a special guest for next Thursday here on Talking College Football. We're getting close to the season, guys. It's getting very, very close. But I hope you have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend. Always make sure to let kindness be your compass. And until next time, bye-bye.